Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another lazy book review. I've already messed up recording this once. Let's give this another shot. Today I'm going to review Exhalation, a collection of short stories, sci-fi short stories by Ted Chiang. Ted Chiang is one of the great masters of the short story game in sort of the modern sci-fi era. He is a very well-known and well-respected sci-fi author, and he's never written a novel. In fact, he's only written about about 15 short stories released in two different collections, and this is his second one, and the first one in 15 years. So that just shows you that he packs a lot of power in each story because he's kind of famous and he's basically not written anything. Of course, he's most well known for the fact that one of his short stories from his original collection, called The Story of Your Life, got adapted into the movie Arrival. And also the short story Understand kind of went around a lot. People seem to really enjoy that one. But I don't know how this guy makes a living. Like, he's barely writing anything. Maybe his short story do just that well, or maybe he's getting a lot of residuals from Arrival. Maybe his wife makes more money and has a steadier job. Maybe he has a side gig. I don't know. I didn't really read his Wikipedia, but it's impressive to me that he's had as big of an impact given how little he's written. So let's review this collection of short stories. I'm going to give this collection, let's say, 4.5 stars. And the reason for that is I think the first two stories are solid. Like, the first two stories are among the best of anything that I've read from any sci-fi writer not named Borges ever. So I think those really carry the collection. And then the rest of the stories in here I'd give between 3 and 4 stars. Like, they are thoughtful. They'll make you learn something, think about it, but they're not really mind-blowing. They don't really push forward the genre. So let's talk about those. I think the only way to review a collection of short stories is kind of go story by story. The first one is The Merchant and the Alchemist's Gate. It's a great story. It takes place in sort of a medieval Middle Eastern kind of setting of, like scimitars and camel caravans and things like that. And it's a time travel story. So the time travel is the sci-fi element, and it kind of shows how a determinist worldview, that is a worldview without free will, is kind of the only one that makes sense when you introduce time travel into the world. And it's a really fun story. I love the setting, the Arabian kind of setting, and it'll tickle your brain a bit to get all the pieces straight. So I enjoyed that one. The title story is the second one, Exhalation, and that is my favorite in this collection. Exhalation is in one of these like little pocket universes that Ted likes to create, where the entire cosmology of the universe is different from ours. So, like, there's like the entire universe is contained within like a metal sphere, and there's these creatures that live in this metal sphere that rely on, there's these little tubes or something where like compressed air comes into the metal sphere, and they consume, well, maybe it's not a metal sphere, maybe it's like a cylinder that's open on one side or something like that, because they consume this compressed air, and that drives all their bodily systems. It drives the entire ecosystem, and the movement from more compressed to less compressed air drives the entire ecosystem. And what makes it so cool is that it's an allegory for what I believe, is it the second law of thermodynamics that says that entropy only increases? So basically, our universe is that. If you substitute low entropy matter for high pressure air. And so by reading Exhalation, you kind of get like a pretty good intuitive feel for how the second law of thermodynamics works and how it drives our universe, and why it's kind of tragic, because there's a fixed supply of low entropy matter. Life relies on taking high entropy matter, converting it into low entropy matter, and the universe only has so much low entropy matter to go around. So Exhalation is great, and the main character in that is one of these little weird alien robot things, and he's, a scientist kind of after the mode of a Renaissance kind of Hook, or kind of guy, like doing these basic science experiments to discover the laws of his universe, and we get to go along for that ride, and it's just inspiring to read about that kind of character. It makes you want to do little physics experiments on your own. After that, there's the life cycle of software objects, which is this 100-page novella in the middle of the collection. It's kind of a Chad move to plop a 100-page novella in the middle of your short story collection, but it's also a Chad move to release a short story collection once every 15 years. So it's a pretty good story. It doesn't quite have the pop of the first two, but it's exploring the ethical issues with creating low-level consciousnesses through artificial intelligence that are sort of bought and traded in these online worlds, and it examines ethical issues like at what level of complexity should these software objects have autonomy, to what level of consciousness should they achieve before they receive human rights, things like that. It's a pretty good story. Not my favorite. Dacey's Patent Automatic Nanny, kind of a throwaway in my opinion. It's fine, nothing special. The Truth of Fact, The Truth of Feeling. This one I really liked. This might be my favorite story from the second half of the collection. It is. He sort of juxtaposes the two stories. One is a primitive pre-agricultural tribe being given a writing system by a Christian missionary, and he shows how that changes society and changes basic ideas about how society works. Because when there's only the oral history, there's no objective truth as to which to check against, and so that oral history can morph and evolve to fit the consensus of society and to fit the needs of the present. But like introducing this objective truth of writing suddenly creates this objective record that disrupts the culture that they had. And then he juxtaposes that with a story in the near future where people start wearing cameras that record their entire life and gives them the ability to search through it. And so what this does is this replaces sort of fallible memory with objective recordings of everything that happens in your life. And he explores like to what extent is it useful for us to have fallible memories? Like we can forget the wrongs people did to us or misremember them to fit our current circumstances, and that goes out the window as we have these ubiquitous surveillance. And I think it's relevant to 2019 just in how, like more of our social life is moving online and leaves an objective permanent record. The internet never forgets is the saying. So I think Ted is pretty even-handed in showing both the plus sides and the downsides of how technology affects culture, and which is one of the things I like about him. Like, he's not one of these techno-optimists, and he's also not like an arch-conservative or reactionary. He's sort of just taking a balanced view of the somewhere in between like primitive nostalgia and techno-optimism. And it's good food for thought, just how culture co-evolves with technology and how it's uncomfortable and it's probably never going to stop. So I like that one quite a bit. There's a couple more stories that he finishes out the collection with that I didn't love. Anxiety is the Dizziness of Freedom is the last one, and it kind of explores, it's a multiverse novel, near future story that plays around with the idea of a multiverse and being able to communicate between near multiverses. It's pretty cool, but not my favorite. And so overall, I think Exhalation is pretty good, and you should pick up Ted Chiang collections when they come out. Just some other authors that come to mind when I think about sci-fi short stories. One, Jose Luis Borges. He's great, and like Ted, I don't think he ever wrote a novel, and he's known for his short stories. And he is I think just the master of the genre, which is surprising because I think he was an Argentinian writer from like the 1950s or so. So it was just cool when I discovered him that I'm like, wow, there's someone dealing with weird sci-fi-esque abstractions in writing that is also like richly detailed and historical feeling, sort of like an Umberto Eco novel, but in short story forms. And Borges is just great. Pick up Labyrinths. It's a great collection. The other writer that I think about is Greg Egan. Now, Greg has written many novels, which he is famous for, but he gets a little bit overlooked in America. For the first 20 years of his career, it was hard to buy his books in America because he's an Australian physicist that writes extremely hard sci-fi. He'll come up with an entire new physics system, complete with equations that if you're a physics student, you can kind of play around with and see how this world is different from our world. And then he'll take a tweaked idea of basic physics and then extract a world out of it and explore it. And I like Greg Egan. I don't like the books. I like the books, prefer the books without the equations to the ones with them. But he is also a great short story writer. And that gets overlooked. I recommend Luminous and Dark Integers if you're into cool sci-fi short stories that you might not have read already. So yeah, that's that. Just a reminder, there's another channel named Chamomile TV that is beating me. They came around after me, and they make children's videos or something, children's educational videos. I don't want to be beat by a bunch of kids. So you got to subscribe, you got to like, and in 2020, we're going to bury them. We're going to leave them so far in our dust that there's no doubt who's the real Chamomile TV, and they'll be motivated to change their name. That's the goal. So please like and subscribe. Peace.